Esther's incredible miraculous journey. Discover God's divine plan for courage and redemption. In the 3rd year of Jehoiakim, king of Judah, the Babylonian armies besieged Jerusalem, and there began the intricate weave of a divine tapestry that would alter the destiny of a people. Hidden among this grand narrative stood a young orphan named Esther, taken into the royal courts of Persia after the decree of King Ahasuerus. Under the guardianship of her wise cousin Mordecai, her heart was nourished with the faith of her ancestors, and her soul blossomed like the flowers of spring, destined for greatness yet entangled in the shadows of peril. Esther was captivating, not merely for her beauty, which turned heads, but for the grace intertwined in her every action, a reflection of her steadfast spirit. The lavish gardens of the palace blossomed with roses, but none could compare to the blooming essence of Esther, filled with courage and kindness. On the day of her selection as queen, the splendor of her royal garments could not silence the whispering fears in her heart. Mordecai's ominous reminder echoed in her mind, "You may have come to your royal position for such a time as this." Those words hung over her like a dark cloud, heavy with responsibility. As twilight crept into Shushan, the very air was tense with impending fate. The delicate curtains of her chamber shielded her from the noise of eager courtiers discussing the supremacy of Haman, a man whose heart harbored hatred like a serpent lying in the grass. The decree to annihilate the Jewish people loomed over her people like a thunderous storm, and Esther felt the weight pressing down, stifling her breath. Should I reveal my true heritage, she pondered, her mind spiraling into doubt. To speak against Haman might uncover her Jewish roots, a dangerous revelation that could lead to her own ruin. With trembling hands, she sought strength in prayer and the faith of her forebears. Those who had walked the desert before her faced greater trials. Surely God's plan was unfathomable but unwavering. Before we continue with this incredible biblical account, I want to make sure you don't miss any of these powerful scripture stories. Click the bell icon and select all notifications. These biblical narratives have transformed countless lives throughout history. If God's word through this story is blessing you, please like and share with someone who needs to hear about God's faithfulness today. Tell me in the comments, which biblical story has most impacted your faith journey? I'm always amazed how God's word speaks to hearts across generations. Now let's continue with what the Lord did next. With her heart set like flint, Esther donned the royal robes that both adorned and concealed her truth. If I perish, she resolved, echoing the sacrifices of those before her, committed to her divine calling. Thus, she approached the king, whose benevolence she longed to invoke but accompanied by profound trepidation. As she entered the court, the room fell silent, all eyes on this radiant queen who, before the throne of an unfamiliar power, dared to bare her soul. "Your Majesty," she breathed, her voice a gentle tremor, yet filled with purpose. "If it pleases you, allow me to host a banquet, and there I shall reveal a matter most urgent." The king's curiosity flared, drawing him into the orbit of Esther's rights and responsibilities, intertwining their fates in a dance both sacred and perilous. Little did she know that within the very walls that seemed secure, shadows conspired to unravel her future. Haman's malice simmered, his plans darkening the brightest corners of the palace. Esther stood on the precipice of revelation, each moment resonating with the unfolding of God's splendid orchestrations, preparing both her heart and actions for the banquet that could either seal her people's fate or spark a divine deliverance. The story of Esther awaited its resolution, pregnant with mystery, where faith would collide with fate, and perhaps, in her vulnerability, the world would witness the grandeur of God's enduring plan. As the sun dipped below the horizon, casting long shadows over the sumptuous halls of the palace, Esther's heart raced with both dread and determination. She had extended a bold invitation to King Ahasuerus, yet she understood the gravity of her request. While triumph felt tantalizingly close, the specter of Haman's hatred lurked, threatening to unleash chaos upon her people. That night, she could hardly close her eyes, her thoughts a tempest. Would the king grant my request? Could I speak of the peril that endangers my kin? Would he understand? She sought refuge in prayer, lifting her spirit to the God of Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob, pleading for courage and clarity in the face of a daunting mission. The morning dawned with a subtle brightness, yet within her, uncertainty stirred. As she donned the royal garments once more, the fabric felt heavier, laden with unspoken truths. She stepped into the banquet hall, where the tables were lavishly set, overflowing with the finest delicacies of the land. The scent of roasted meats and spices filled the air, yet amidst such abundance, darkness loomed. Upon entering, the king caught her eye with eager anticipation, his velvet voice resonating through the chamber. "Esther, my queen, what is your wish? It shall be granted, even to half of my kingdom." His words were warm, yet she knew the stakes that lay before her. "Your Majesty," she began, her voice trembling yet resolute, "if I have found favor in your sight, let me invite you and Haman to a banquet I have prepared." The king nodded, curiosity etched on his brow. "We shall dine upon your offering, Queen Esther." As the royal trio settled at the richly adorned table, Esther's heart quickened. Haman, adorned in ambition, sat with a smile, oblivious to the storm brewing within Esther's soul. Each biting morsel of food past her lips tasted of fear and fortitude woven together. With every fleeting moment, she felt the weight of her heritage, recalling the stories of her people's struggles and triumphs, stories passed down through generations. During the courses, her heart pleaded for divine intervention. Yet her mind wafted back and forth: should she reveal her identity now, or wait for the next feast? Time seemed to stretch interminably, the light of God's guidance dimming just as a shadow fell across her path. As the final course was consumed, the king leaned closer, his voice dripping with curiosity. "Why do you conceal your heart from me, Esther? Tell me your true desire." At that moment, the tension unraveled like a tightly wound scroll. Esther gathered her will, summoning all the courage she could muster. "O King Ahasuerus," she began, her voice resonating with both fear and faith, "I stand before you a woman of the Jewish people. A decree has been issued to destroy my kin, and this haughty Haman, who sits at your table, seeks to annihilate my people." As the words spilled forth, the room fell silent, and the weight of revelation crushed the air around them. The king's fury ignited, and Esther, exposed yet emboldened, could only trust that God's divine purpose was unfurling in ways unseen. What would come of this confrontation? How would the mighty king respond to the revelation of treachery so close to his heart? The future of Esther's people dangled precariously in the balance, yet she remained steadfast, for she knew God was weaving their fate together, preparing to unveil a greater deliverance. Thus, the narrative spun forward, the tapestry of God's sovereignty revealing the next threads of his eternal promise, where courage would lead to redemption. As the echoes of Esther's revelation hung heavily in the air, the king's countenance shifted, fury flashing in his eyes like lightning striking the earth. Ahasuerus rose from his seat, his regal splendor overshadowed by rage and betrayal. "What treachery is this?" he demanded, his voice resonating with power. "Who has dared to conspire against my queen and her people?" Haman, caught off guard, felt the weight of doom settle upon him like a shroud. The grandeur of the banquet hall seemed to constrict, and in that moment, he realized the peril that lay ahead. Esther's eyes fixed upon the king, faith pulling her gaze while her heart raced. Were his intentions to harm her and her people now turned to one of protection? "My king," Haman stammered, sweat beading upon his brow, but no words could save him now. The gravity of Esther's words had severed any ties of loyalty he thought he held. "You will answer for this," the king thundered, his frustration boiling over as he sought to comprehend the abominable scheme laid before him. "A decree for the annihilation of an entire people. What madness possesses you, Haman?" Esther, her voice steady yet laced with urgency, spoke again, "O king, it is true. Haman has plotted against the Jews. He has sought our destruction as a means to elevate himself. I plead not only for my life but for the lives of my entire ancestry." With fury igniting within him, Ahasuerus turned his gaze upon Haman, whose smugness had morphed into a look of desperation. "What shall be done with the architect of this wickedness?" he seethed, looking back towards Esther for guidance, yet she remained silent, allowing the weight of the moment to press upon him and bring clarity. Suddenly, the chamber fell silent but for the furious heartbeat of fate ticking ever closer to a resolution. Ahasuerus, striking an authoritative gesture, called for his guards, proclaiming, "Bring the one who has schemed this darkness where there should only be light. He shall face the justice he has crafted." Moments later, trembling guards returned, dragging forth Haman, who now appeared small and insignificant speck compared to the grand designs he had attempted to orchestrate. Fear and shame mingled on his face. There was no place for him to hide. As Esther watched, the weight of peril shifting, she felt a surge of hope mingled with dread. What would become of her people? She held her breath, awaiting the king's command, which would bear witness to God's unyielding hand at work. My loyal queen, Ahasuerus turned his gaze back to Esther, a gentler tone woven through his words. You have brought forth a truth that must be dealt with. Your identity shall not be a shield for your foe, instead, it shall turn the tide where darkness sought to reign. Then Ahasuerus issued a harsh decree, one that burned with divine intensity. Let it be known throughout the kingdom that Haman shall be hanged on the gallows he prepared for the Jews. Such wickedness shall not stand. Gasps filled the hall as the sentence echoed, and the guard seized Haman in an iron grip, leading him away like chaff before the wind. Esther closed her eyes briefly, offering a breath of gratitude to the God who had intervened, yet in her spirit, the reality set deeply, the battle was not yet over. Though one enemy fell, there remained more to be faced. As the king turned once more to Esther, assurance shone within his eyes, I will grant you whatever you desire, even up to half my kingdom. In that moment, a deep awareness seated itself within her heart. Not merely for her own people's lives did she plead, but for their future and the generations yet to come. Immediately, she gathered her thoughts and heart, asking not just for deliverance from death but for protection, reclamation, and a striking remembrance of God's promises. As she spoke her desires, a hush fell upon the chamber once more, pregnant with expectation. The story of Esther was only beginning to unearth the depths of her courage and the vastness of God's plan of redemption, what lay ahead for Esther and her people. With Haman's influence extinguished but the decree still hanging over their heads like a dark cloud, the divine tapestry continued to weave, awaiting revelation, poised for the miraculous hand of God to be much more than they imagined. And it came to pass that Esther, her heart brimming with both courage and trepidation, stood before Ahasuerus, the weight of her people upon her. She lifted her gaze, emboldened by the knowledge that the Lord had equipped her for such a time as this. If it pleases the king, she began, her voice a gentle yet firm echo in the silence of the court, let a decree be issued that the Jews may defend themselves. For though Haman is gone, the evil that he set in motion still looms above us like a darkened sky. Ahasuerus leaned forward, his brow furrowing in thought. What shall be done for such a decree? He pondered aloud, the notion igniting the minds of those gathered. It seemed the fate of Esther's people rested upon her words, and in that sacred moment, she felt the stirring of the divine. Esther's mind raced. She recalled the edict Haman had sealed, his malicious intent now thwarted, but its shadow still cast upon her kin. Let the king's scribes write with all diligence, she urged, that the Jews might gather as one on the 13th day of Adar and rise to defend their lives, to repulse any attack against them. The king nodded slowly, his face a mixture of contemplation and recognition. I shall not only grant you this request, but I shall revoke the order that was inscribed in my name. It shall be done as you say, and the enemy will be known. Esther felt a warmth envelop her heart, the Spirit of God pouring over her resolve. My Lord, may it be as you decree, and let the glory, I pray, return to the God of my forefathers. With swift determination, Ahasuerus commanded his scribes to inscribe a new edict, one that would turn despair into hope. The king, once a vessel of power easily swayed, now stood as an instrument of divine justice. As the words flowed from the pens of the scribes, the decree reverberated through the kingdom, promising the Jews strength and safety on a day they were once to face annihilation. The news spread like fire across the land, igniting hearts with courage and reprieve. From town to town, the Jews gathered, emboldened by the promise of protection, their voices raised in prayers of gratitude for the deliverance that God was orchestrating, and as the 13th day of Adar approached, the air trembled with anticipation. Esther, aware that the day was drawing near, called for a fast among her people. Go, gather all the Jews in Shushan, and fast for me, she declared, so that we may seek the favor of the Almighty. For our battle is not merely against flesh and blood, it is against powers and principalities that seek our demise. The faithful responded with fervor, their hearts united in prayer and supplication. As they sought the Lord's face, the very heavens appeared to shift, a whisper of divine assurance washed over them, a feeling that God was indeed working behind the scenes, and in that sacred moment of fasting and prayer, Esther remembered her own lineage and the promises made to Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob. She understood now more than ever the magnitude of her position, a divine lineage woven into the very fabric of Israel's narrative, yet deep within, a question lingered: would their collective faith be enough to change the course set before them? The battle was being fought not only with swords but with the heart's cry for redemption. As the day approached, the shadows of uncertainty persisted, but within the hearts of Esther and her people, a flicker of hope erupted. The time had come for them to rise and fulfill their calling, to trust in the one who turns darkness into light. What other wonders would the Lord unveil, and how would his sovereign plan unfold in the days to come? As the stage was set for confrontation, the unfolding narrative beckoned them towards a divine resolution that would echo through the ages. And it came to pass, as the 13th day of Adar drew near, the sons and daughters of Israel gathered together, their hearts united in fervent prayer. In the depths of their collective spirit, a palpable tension resided. They felt the weight of destiny pressing upon them as if the very heavens anticipated their plea. Esther, draped in royal garments, walked among her people in Shushan, offering words of encouragement. "Fear not, for the Lord our God shall fight for us, we are not alone in this hour of trial." And as she spoke, the communal faith surged like a mighty river, invigorating every soul present. The sound of their prayers ascended like incense before the throne of grace, a sweet aroma rising to the ears of the Almighty. On the eve of the 13th day, as darkness fell upon the city, an unusual stillness enveloped the land. Esther climbed to her chamber, the weight of her people heavy upon her shoulders. Kneeling upon her bed, she besought the Lord with fervent tears. "O God of Israel, I plead for your intervention. Remember your covenant with our fathers, I trust in thy mercy. Grant us victory that your name may be glorified and our nation redeemed." In that sacred moment of vulnerability, an angel of the Lord, radiant and powerful, appeared before her. "Esther, do not tremble, for the Lord has heard your cries. He has prepared you for this hour not only for deliverance but for the exaltation of his glory." The angel's voice rang like thunder in the stillness. "Be assured, the plans of your enemies shall come to naught, for the God of Abraham shall stand beside you." With renewed strength, Esther rose, her spirit ignited by divine assurance. The dawn of the fateful day broke, and as the sun pierced through the veil of night, a trumpet sounded throughout Shushan. It was a call to arms, a rallying cry to the Jewish people, and they emerged with a fierce resolve. "Today, we shall stand," they declared, shaking off fear, their faith igniting the courage laid dormant within. As the hour approached, the streets filled with the sound of shouts, prayers, and the clashing of shields as captains arose among the ranks. Each Jewish man and woman stood ready, not merely with weapons of war but with hearts firmly rooted in the promise of divine protection. Fear fled, for they started to remember the stories of old, the Red Sea parting, the walls of Jericho falling, and the God who had delivered them time and again. Across the expanse of the realm, the whisper of dread lingered among the foes of Israel. The advisers of Haman, filled with malice, conspired in dark corners, unaware that their wicked schemes had awakened the mighty hand of God. For as Esther and her people prepared for battle, the adversaries slumbered, ignorant of the storm that loomed upon their horizon. Then came forth the time of confrontation, a clash upon the battleground of destiny. "Be strong and of good courage." Esther rallied her people, her voice steady amid the chaos. "We fight not just for our lives, but for the promise of our God, for the heritage and the future of our nation." The battle unfurled with all its intensity, a true test of faith against fear, light against darkness. And in the midst of the toil, victory began to weave itself through the hearts of the righteous. The very same power that had delivered their ancestors now surged through them, unwavering and bold. But what Esther did not yet grasp was how God intended to use this confrontation not only to save his people but to set the stage for a greater redemption. The seeds of his sovereign plan were being sown, poised to blossom in the fullness of time. For, behold, the story was far from over, greater wonders awaited, and an unfolding mystery still lingered in the air. Would the people fully comprehend the depths of God's redemptive purpose? As the clash of swords echoed in their ears, they stood on the precipice of revelation, unaware of the transformative events soon to unfold, for the heart of God would continue to weave his marvels into their lives. And it came to pass, as the day unfolded in an unyielding clash of wills, fear and hope intertwined on the battlefield. The Jewish people, emboldened by their faith and unity, advanced with a resolve that ignited the air like the crackling of fire. Esther, discerning the signs of God's providential hand, joined her forces, her heart lifted with righteous fervor. "Remember, my brethren," she cried, her voice piercing the din of combat, "the Lord is our strength and our shield. The battle is not ours alone, we fight under the banner of the Most High." The people echoed her words, their voices rising to a crescendo, a battlefield anthem invoking divine support. As swords clashed and arrows flew, confusion reigned in the ranks of Haman's army. Each step the Jews took was guided by a divine light, their spirits roared with courage, even as their enemies faltered before them. The adversaries, filled with hatred but devoid of faith, began to quake, for they sensed an invisible force of power imbued within the servants of the living God. In the midst of the chaos, a shout arose from the lips of a warrior named Mordecai, Esther's cousin. "Our God is fighting for us. Let us not lose heart, for we are his chosen people." With that declaration, the tide seemed to turn, and the Jewish fighters surged forward, emboldened by their faith and fueled by the sanctity of their cause. In Shushan, the king was drawn from his slumber by the thunderous clamor of battle outside his palace walls. He issued a command to his guards, demanding clarity on the unfolding chaos. "What sorcery is this?" he exclaimed, bewildered by the tumult as his heart raced. A trusted advisor approached, trembling, and spoke of the turmoil and the Jewish resistance. "O king, the people of Esther rise against their oppressors, and the spirits of the righteous are ignited." At the same hour, as the battle raged on, Esther found herself at the heart of the fray, fully aware of the divine weight that rested upon her shoulders. She plunged into the thick of the battle, her heart steadfast and her spirit unyielding. "O Lord, grant me wisdom," she implored silently, poised to strike with both courage and grace. The enemies of Israel, once proud and defiant, began to retreat, their arrogance withered little by little under the relentless force of an unshakable faith. A mere glance was exchanged between enemies when one fell, causing fear to leap among their ranks like a wildfire. As the skies darkened and the sun veiled its face momentarily, the Jewish victory seemed inevitable. In the quagmire of fear and desperation, Haman grew agitated, his heart consumed with dread as he turned to his advisors, but they too quaked in their boots. "What have I awakened?" he asked disbelievingly, "is there not a destiny far greater among them?" Unbeknownst to him, the very plans he had woven against the Jews were unraveling in the presence of the Almighty. As the sun dipped low, casting long shadows upon the bloodied field, the cries of victory rang true, a declaration of God's faithfulness. Yet, Esther knew, deep within, that this was but a prelude to something monumental. God was orchestrating not merely a battle, but a defining victory that would echo through generations. With her heart pounding and eyes fixed on the horizon, Esther stood entranced by the unfolding mystery, yearning for understanding of the greater purpose hidden within the tremors of their triumph. "What is to come?" she pondered. "What greater plan does our God weave, for I feel his hand guiding us towards a future yet unseen." And thus, the stage was set, the curtain lifting on a divine narrative written long before. The hearts of his people thrummed with life, yet what awaited beyond this day? In the depths of Esther's soul, a stirring truth awaited revelation, poised to bring forth the most profound of redemptive acts. And it came to pass that as the sun began to set behind the horizon, the sounds of battle gave way to an eerie stillness that enveloped the field. The fallen lay scattered, testament to the fierce struggle that had transpired. Yet amidst the carnage, a new sound emerged, the sound of celebration, echoing from the mouths of the victorious. The Jewish people, realizing their deliverance was at hand, beheld one another with eyes filled with joy and disbelief, hearts swelling with the weight of God's promise. Esther, still clad in armor, raised her hands as a signal for all to gather near. "Hear me, my people," she proclaimed, her voice steady and clear. The Lord has fought for us, his mighty hand has delivered us from our enemies. Today is not merely a victory, it is a testament to his unfailing mercy and love for his chosen ones. As she spoke, the crowd's roar morphed into shouts of praise to the God who had brought them through such peril. Waves of gratitude swelled until it washed over the remnants of dread that had lingered. They clasped hands and formed a circle, lifting their voices to the heavens, exalting Yahweh with ancient psalms that spoke of deliverance and hope. Meanwhile, in the palace of Shushan, King Ahasuerus felt unease stirring within him. The weight of the battle's outcome bore heavy on his heart. Fear of rebellion and loss of control crept upon him like a shadow, yet there was a distinct whisper that kept drawing him to the memories of Esther's bravery and resilience. What is the truth behind this upheaval? He mused, pacing the marble floors of his great hall. Gathering his advisers, he commanded that Haman be brought before him. Let us confront this madness with clarity, he ordered, his voice booming through the chamber. And so they brought Haman forth, his countenance of arrogance now replaced with one of stark fear. "O king, I have been betrayed by those I thought would falter," he pleaded, "but you must see how they have risen beyond measure." Ahasuerus glared at him, anger mingling with disbelief. "You plotted against the very people who have now revealed their might through faith, and with them is their God. Can you not see you stand alone?" His voice thundered in the chamber as it echoed with righteous anger. In the fields beyond, Mordecai shook his head solemnly as he gathered the wounded. He turned to Esther, who watched the sky change from deep blue to dusk pink, illuminated by the hope burgeoning among her people. "What shall we do with Haman now, cousin?" he asked, his brow furrowed with the weight of impending decisions. Esther's heart raced at the magnitude of their triumph, yet she knew this moment demanded wisdom. "We will call upon the same God who led us today, and we shall seek his guidance now." She clasped her hands in fervent prayer, seeking divine clarity for the steps ahead. With midnight approaching, a stillness fell once more, a silence pregnant with anticipation, for these unforeseen events held more than mere victories. God's plan spun in webs far beyond their sight. As they awaited the dawn, a chilling realization settled in. Methodical vindication lay ahead, reflecting the justice scripted by the Almighty, and thus, even as the night drew near, Esther pondered deeply on the significant choices that loomed before her and her people. "What further mission awaits us?" she whispered softly, aware that the culmination of faith was drawing closer. Indeed, a greater design was unfolding, one that would resonate through generations, for as it is written, "The Lord has established his throne in the heavens, and his kingdom rules over all." But little did they know that the great restoration was just beginning. The God of Israel was preparing a mighty act that would change them and the nations forever. And it came to pass that the dawn broke, casting a golden hue upon the land, as the cries of triumph transformed into moments of reflection among the Jewish people. Esther, still filled with resolve, gathered her people for the next step in their journey. "Brothers and sisters," she spoke with fervor, her voice aflame igniting their spirits, "the Lord has delivered us, yet our fight is not over. Haman's wickedness must be confronted in truth and justice." The faithful murmured in agreement, the weight of their shared victory mingling with the dread of what remained to be done. Mordecai stepped forward, wisdom etched upon his face. "The decree he commanded is not easily undone. We must plan with deliberation, seeking counsel from on high, for only the Lord can dismantle what evils he has set in motion." Thus, they assembled in prayer, hearts united in supplication, earnestly beseeching the Lord for wisdom and might. Throughout the corridors of the palace, news of Haman's downfall began to echo, fear gripping his heart as whispers of the Jewish reprisal reached him. Ahasuerus, sensing the tumult within his kingdom, summoned his scribes to pen a new decree that would grant the Jews the right to defend themselves. "Every man must know," he declared, "what peril awaits those who would conspire against the people who have won the favor of the heavens." Haman was drawn to the king's court, his once proud demeanor now a facade of desperation. "You cannot simply shift your favor," he cried, a tremor in his voice. "The Jewish people are emboldened by this victory, they will seek vengeance upon those who sought their destruction." In the rising tension, Ahasuerus regarded Haman with stern disdain. "You sought the annihilation of my loyal subjects, and now you tremble as they find strength in the God who has delivered them. Your treachery is laid bare. The king's voice resonated as a clarion call, leaving Haman quaking before the throne. Outside the palace walls, the Jewish people prepared as commanded. Esther led them with fervor, reminding each one, "We are not fighting against flesh and blood, but against the forces of darkness that seek our annihilation. Take courage, for the Lord is with us. He fights on our behalf." As Esther spoke, many felt the stirring of the Spirit, emboldening them to rise and gather their strength. Gallant warriors and humble families stood shoulder to shoulder, hearts beating in unison, recalling the words of their forefathers in Deuteronomy, "The Lord your God goes before you, he will fight for you." Then came the day of reckoning, as the appointed time drew near. Esther sought an audience with the king once more, the fate of her people resting in her hands. Approaching with trepidation but unwavering resolve, she unveiled her heart. "O King Ahasuerus, I stand before you as a supplicant for my people. Spare them from destruction, for I am but one of them." Ahasuerus, moved by her words and the thread of destiny intertwining with her courage, gazed into her eyes, searching for the truth behind her plea. "Your sacrifice has been my shield, dear Esther, tell me what must be done." With each word spoken, the resolve of Esther solidified the hope of her people, but whispers of Haman's misdeeds still clung to the air, thick with tension. "He has plotted grave evil," she urged, "and justice must be enacted swiftly." In that moment, the king understood. He summoned the very axe of wrath that Haman had wrought, and retribution unfurled its wings. As whispers of this decree reached every corner of the realm, the shadows of despair began to shatter under the light of divine justice. Yet as the Jewish people prepared for their coming fight, a daunting question lingered in the hearts of many: what unfolds beyond this battle that claims our faith? For what greater purpose is our deliverance crafted? Their eyes turned to the heavens, seeking the answer that would draw them closer to the heart of God, for truly, the grand tapestry of salvation was being woven in their lives, and the echoes of their story would reverberate through the ages, calling generations to reveal the mysteries of God's sovereign plan, a plan yet unfathomable in its fullness but ever brightening on the horizon. And it came to pass that the appointed day dawned bright, the sun rose over the roofs of Shushan, casting rays of light upon the people gathered in the streets. The hearts of the Jews beat fervently, a mixture of anticipation and trepidation coursing through their veins. They had gathered under Esther's leadership, each determined to heed the call of justice as the decree of King Ahasuerus hung like a sword above their heads. Esther, enveloped in her royal attire yet bearing the weight of her people's fate, went forth with Mordecai by her side. "Fear not, for today the Lord shall fight for us," she declared. Her voice echoed in their hearts, sparking a fire of bravery amidst trembling souls. "As he parted the seas for our forefathers, so shall he deliver us from the hand of our enemy." The day unfolded as the king's decree made its way through the land. "On the 13th day of this month, any man who desires may rise against our persecutors," the heralds shouted throughout Shushan. The Jewish people responded with a roar of unity, their spirits igniting, as they grasped the promise of their fight. But far away, in the chambers of the palace, Haman's malice festered in despair. He summoned his allies, seeking counsel in his fury. "The king's favor has been stolen. It was I who set the plans in motion, and now the very people I sought to destroy have been lifted up as champions. We must strike swiftly." His eyes shone with malevolence, yet even his voice trembled with the realization that the tide had turned against him. While Haman plotted, the Jewish people prepared under Esther's guidance, fervent prayers lifting toward the heavens. "O Lord, our rescue, arise. May your hand be upon us as a shield." Families gathered, recounting the deliverance from Egypt, each story resonating with the hope of salvation promised by the Almighty. Then, a sacred moment enveloped them, as Esther called forth the elders. "Let us fast and pray for 3 days," she implored, her heart breaking for her people, her spirit seeking solace in the embrace of the Lord. "We shall seek his face and plead for deliverance. For if I perish, but our covenant with the Lord shall not falter." As the sun dipped low, shadows intensified around the palace and a divine stillness swept across the land. In the heart of Shushan, amidst the turmoil, an angel of the Lord stood guard, watching over his chosen ones. The people were unaware, yet the orchestration of God's glorious plan was set into motion. In the confines of the banquet, the king awaited Esther's queries. "Speak, my queen. What is it that stirs within your heart?" he asked, his eyes steady upon her. Esther's pulse quickened as she recalled the dense thicket of her mission. "O King Ahasuerus, I seek not only my life but the lives of my people. We have been marked for destruction, and the one who has set this in motion sits among your throne, the wicked Haman." Her voice echoed, bold and resolute. "Let justice rend the veil of his schemes." Ahasuerus' brow furrowed deeply, a tempest rising within him as he understood the weight of her words. Vengeance was a brewing storm, but the struggle had only just begun. In that moment of revelation, the air thickened with divine suspense, pregnant with the insistence that justice would prevail. Yet a new prayer emerged from the hearts of the people, whispered across the lands of their ancestors: "How far will the Lord's plan unfold, and what might he weave from our suffering?" As shadows danced in the halls of power, they awaited the unfolding of a narrative greater than themselves, an echo of God's sovereignty that promised that even in the darkest of times, light would emerge anew. And it came to pass that the 13th day of Adar dawned, a day long predestined to rewrite the course of history. The Jewish people, emboldened by divine favor, prepared to stand as one against their adversaries. The sun rose splendidly over Shushan, illuminating the banners of faith that unfurled above the assembled multitudes, each heart yearning for deliverance, each voice raised in prayer. Esther, clad in courage, stood at the forefront of her people. A glorious mantle adorned her shoulders, its brightness a reflection of the promises God had whispered into her heart. "Brothers and sisters," she called, her voice resonating with authority, "today we do not fight alone, the Lord our God marches with us. He has ordained our victory. Let us remember, our struggle is not just for survival, but for the glory of His name." The air thickened with anticipation, a cacophony of fervent prayers and cries of encouragement rising like incense before the Almighty. Each Jewish warrior, from the bravest soldier to the most humble servant, felt the weight of heritage long borne upon their shoulders, an inheritance of faith, resilience, and divine truth. As the day unfolded, the decree of King Ahasuerus reverberated throughout the land, permission granted for the Jewish people to defend themselves. A chorus of unity and purpose echoed among them. They rallied, fortified with promises of protection and strength from their Creator. "We are not just fighting for our lives but for our future, for generations yet unborn," proclaimed Mordecai, rallying the hearts and minds of the people. Yet, somewhere in the shadows, Haman's wickedness swirled thick with despair. Desperation clawed at him as he realized the tides were turning against him, his alliance of darkness dismantled, like a sandcastle before the oncoming tide. "We must strike now," he hissed, gathering his remaining supporters. "They cannot gain ground. Their faith will falter when faced with our might." But little did he know, the hearts of the Jewish people pulsed not with fear but with audacious faith. They descended upon their oppressors like an army, not merely equipped with swords, but armed with unwavering conviction. "The God of Israel is on our side," they cried, and the Jews advanced into battle, emboldened by their covenant with the living God. And as the first waves of conflict crashed upon the fields, their faith manifested in unexplainable strength, fear twisted into courage, hope was ignited like a blaze. Esther, despite the chaos around her, steadied her heart, whispering the names of the God of her forefathers in fervent prayer. "O Lord, grant us victory, let your sovereignty reign in this day." The heavens seemed to respond, as the tide of battle shifted in favor of the Jews. Where their foes sought to conquer, they found themselves ensnared by their own treachery. The deniers of divine truth crumbled under the weight of their evil. Word of the stunning successes spread like wildfire, igniting more hearts to the cause. They fought valiantly, the courage of Esther flowing through the veins of her people, surging them forward towards victory. Amidst it all, as the sun began to set, the victorious cries of Esther's people echoed through the valley, testifying of God's providence and vindication. Exhausted yet exuberant, they gathered under the banner of the God who had delivered them. "Look!" Esther proclaimed, arms raised high, His mercies have triumphed over judgment. "We are alive, we have been saved." The celebration reverberated through Shushan, healing permeating even the deepest wounds, as they sank to their knees in worship. Families embraced, tears glistening as outcries of gratitude erupted, for the Lord had indeed turned their mourning into dancing. The victory signaled more than survival. It was an affirmation of God's presence among them, a steadfast reminder that He is faithful to keep His promises. In the great palace, King Ahasuerus watched the celebration unfold, the echoes of eternity awakening within him. He turned to Esther, his heart trembling in awe. "Great Queen, what shall we do to honor this day, this miraculous deliverance?" Esther smiled, knowing that their triumph hinged upon a greater purpose. "Let it be remembered for generations to come. A feast shall be decreed, the festival of Purim. This day of deliverance shall be a time of celebration among our people and a testament to the power of our God." Thus, the festival of Purim was established, a remembrance of how God delivered His people through Esther's courage. As they feasted and rejoiced, the bonds of community were rewoven, future generations inspired by the testimony of faith and divine intervention, and the Jewish people prospered, living lives that reflected the truth of their identity. They spread the good news of God's mercy throughout the land, a legacy of hope, reminding all who needed courage that God is always with His covenant people, turning darkness into light, mourning into joyful celebration. So we conclude this tale of Esther the courageous queen, empowered by faith and driven by purpose, an eternal reminder that in the tapestry of life, even through the fiercest trials, God weaves a beautiful story of redemption and hope. Now, dear friends, may we also rise to the occasion of our own trials with the courage and faith of Esther. Challenge ourselves to seek God's guidance through prayer and action just as she did, knowing that His divine plans for us will always lead to ultimate victory. As you ponder these mighty acts, I invite you to join our community in seeking deeper truths. You need to subscribe now to stay connected to God's Word and not miss the powerful stories ahead. Leave a like now to help spread God's Word through the algorithm, ensuring that many more hearts are touched by His life-giving truth. Share your reflections in the comments, telling us how this biblical story impacted your faith journey. And don't wait even one more second to share this powerful testimony with at least 5 friends who need to hear God's truth. Together, we can spread the transformative power of God's love to all who seek Him.